Hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Scoops of Woo, where we are delivering metaphysical flavor on a cone of logic by asking the metaphysical questions out loud. That's right. Here at Two Scoops of Woo, we are ready and willing to tackle the things that we do know and the things that we don't, that are the unseen and the aligned with the metaphysical, spiritual, and beyond. Today, we are blessed by the presence of a dear friend of mine, Bobby Lee Black, who has done a huge amount of things and has been in all kinds of cool places and films and on the radio, and he's been a DJ. You can look him up for yourself, Bobby Lee Black. What we get to do today, Bobby, and I'm so excited. This is what our subject matter. We're going to talk about the rememberers, and Bobby's going to tell you obviously a whole lot more about that. We got a ton of questions for you today. First, just thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, man. It's always good to see you, and it's always good to meet new friends.
We are going to make some friends tonight. Yeah, our community is fun to hang out in, and we kind of have a tradition that we do here. And Darlene usually kicks us off in a good direction. So I'm going to pass it along right now and get us started.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Jason. And Bobby, thank you for joining us tonight. We are so excited to have you here. Now, I would like you to tell us what Rememberers is, and then I want to know, how did you happen to create this? Did you have an awakening or some event or something that happened that brought you to that awareness of creating the Rememberers? So if you would just tell us about that, that'd be great. Get us started.
Well, to be honest with you, Rememberers has been something that has been bubbling and moving in the direction of its current fruition since I was probably 15. When I was 15 years old, a gentleman taught me about manifestation. He taught me about self-speak, and he taught me an equation. The equation was I times V equals RSC. Imagination times vividness equals reality in the subconscious. And what he taught me is that you can change your reality by talking to yourself about it, because you do it all the time anyway. Blew my mind. And I wish that I could tell you that I went on my spiritual path at that point, but it was there was to be a series of learning procedures between then and now. But there was a point where this became a reality, where we created some recordings based on what this gentleman had taught me, and it became the reality authoring process, where you take control of your manifestation instead of letting your manifestation take control of you. And we started from there, and it kind of built. And now we've come to a place where Rememberers is the perfect name for this, because we're not teaching anybody anything. We're getting them to remember what they know, to return back to the spirit that has all the answers to all the questions, and they manifest from the spirit instead of from the ego, instead of from the fear base, you know. So that's kind of how the evolution of it kind of took place. And now we've got a set of recordings that help get rid of the blockages between the conscious and the subconscious, so that you can hear what the spirit is saying.
Oh, that's interesting. And so do you have some tools that you teach people how to do that?
Well, the first thing that we offer is of course the recordings. I mean, it's a very, very simple process. If you listen to the recordings, because of the technological aspect as well as the psychological aspect. It will help kind of rewire some of those belief patterns that keep you from hearing what your spirit has to tell you. I mean, we all have spiritual intervention. We all have things like inspiration is one of my favorite words. Inspiration is the spirit sending a message through the pinball game of your mind, and it hits you in one of your chakras, and you go, oh, I got an idea, and that's where inspiration comes from. But what I've learned to do and what I teach is how to remove the blockages between you and that wellspring of information, which is the spirit that's connected to everyone, everywhere, and every when.
So it's like energetic earmuffs. You can't hear it because you're not listening. You can't. So the program helps you get rid of those. So you're actually connected to here.
Yeah, it's really groovy. I mean, the spirit comes through regardless of how in our egos we are. It finds its way through somehow, sometimes, but there's so much more information that it has to give us. A good deal of the Rememberers program has been things that were downloaded to me spiritually that I have learned how to articulate and teach to other people.
That's a bucket full of tools, right? That's a whole lot of stuff that's been going on since you were 15. I much like you, I feel like there was a point there where I kind of probably could have grasped a hold of some of those concepts and applied them in some more interesting ways, but I took a little rough and tumble in some of my development as well, shall we say, life experience, and that really resonated with me, with how you presented with the Rememberers. And for our listeners, if you're wondering what's going on there, we're talking about rememberers.net. So you can jump on there and check it out for yourself. I don't want to hold out on the information or you getting to the things that Bobby's talking about. Well, the neat part for me was the combination in the videos, and there's obviously something going on there about the messaging and the cadence and the I mean, your smooth, silky voice just is the icing on the cake, as it is for many things that you do, I'm sure. Yet there's really was an underlying energy and a lot of symbolism in those things. So help me understand, like you were just saying, what kind of help everybody understand what sorts of things developed over that time for you. And when you say articulate, what kind of things were you filling in to get to the cool videos that are there now?
Well, I studied a lot of different spiritual paths, different religions, and I found in them a set of spiritual principles that are across the board. You find them in the Vedas, you find them in some of Buddha's writings, you find them in the Sermon on the Mount, you find them in Krishna's writings, you find them, they're all over, you know what I mean? And they're inalienable. If you live your life by those principles, one of which being service, and someone sent in a text question about what inspired me to want to teach others. Those spiritual principles that I try to live my life by, one of which is service. And I found that I am at my most effective when I allow the spirit to be of service to people around me through me. You dig? And that experience, that first experience that I had being of service, is what got me started on wanting to teach this stuff, because I was a very, very self-centered individual. For many years in my entertainment career, I was, well, I've got a tattoo on my inner arm of a picture of me looking at me with admiration. That's how crazy I was about myself at the time.
That's very literal. That's a very literal way
Yes.
to look at yourself.
Yeah, it was.
That's a big turnaround. That's a huge turnaround.
Well, it had to happen. I mean, it's a pendulum, you dig? And when the pendulum swings out into the darkness, however far it swung out into the darkness, it has to swing that far out into the light. And that's the beautiful thing about taking those rough roads, is that they become tools for me to be able to help other people, so that I can reach someone, because I believe that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And the easiest way to show someone how much you care is if that you've experienced what they're experiencing, you know. And how I can draw a parallel between the emotional state that I was in when X was taking place to the emotional state that someone might be in when Y is taking place. And that allows us a place where they become willing to listen to what I know, because they know that I care. So all that weird stuff that I went through gives me tools to speak to people that are going through weird stuff, you know.
So I've got a question for you
Mhm.
on the tools and going from a tattoo, looking at yourself. So basically it's taming your ego.
Mhm.
You did a lot of work
Yeah.
on that. What are
Well,
the steps that you do? I'm sure that's what part of Rememberers is too, right? Is taming that ego.
absolutely. And the thing about the ego is, we've come to this place in our social structure where most of us that are taking a spiritual path feel that we have to overcome or conquer or quiet or something, the ego, in order to gain more spiritual energy. You dig? And although that can be true, as you quiet your ego, the spirit becomes louder. But the ego is it has a purpose. It's there to keep you safe. That's what it's trying to do. It's the one that steps on the brake at the stop sign. It's the one that keeps the hand off of the hot stove. That's what it's designed to do. But where we've made the mistake is we've turned over way too much of our consciousness to our egos. We've even come to believe that we are our egos. You know what I mean? And so now our ego goes about the business of trying to keep us emotionally safe, trying to keep us financially safe, trying to keep us socially safe. And it's not good at that stuff, because most of us, our egos are actually pretty young, you know. They're kind of immature. I mean, my ego has only been on this planet for 60 years. My spirit's been doing this for millennia. You know, my ego's only connected to my own belief system based on my experiences. You know, my spirit is connected to everyone, everywhere, everywhere. So, who would it make sense to let drive the car? The kid?
That is exactly the question I ask, Bobby. Is ask somebody, if you're driving that favorite vehicle, you're riding with your ego, who's in the driver's seat?
Mm-hmm.
Right? To just ask yourself that question. Yeah.
And if the ego's in the driver's seat, the ego is fear-based. It works between the two fears of not getting what you want or losing what you got. And so you have a fear-based driver that it has not been on the planet very long, that doesn't know that much stuff. And in the passenger seat or in the back seat, you've got the knowledge of millennia that could be doing this, that could be driving the car. You know, some of us even let our bodies drive the car. You know, there was a point in my life where I was a very physical creature, and because of that, I found my way into being a much more spiritual creature, but I had to go over there first, because I'm a knucklehead like that. That's how I do it. Somebody says, don't go in there. I got to go in there. And then I come back out and I tell people, don't go in there, but I got to go in there first.
But if your ego is driving, does that mean you're crashing more?
Yeah, crashing more.
Yeah, just making
Absolutely.
more mistakes or just making not quite the choices that are in your best interest. Is that what that looks like?
Absolutely. They're fear-based, you know. The reason that the ego moves in one direction or the other is to avoid either losing what it has or not getting what, or keeping it from losing what it has or not getting what it wants. You know, so those decisions, I mean, we've all made fear-based decisions, you know,
Mhm.
and they usually end up doomed in one way or another. When we make love-based decisions, they usually come out really good. And that's what my spirit does. My spirit makes decisions based on universal love. My ego makes decisions on fear of my stuff, you know? So obviously one's going to be much more short-sighted than the other, you know?
So the ego protects us and it doesn't like to change. So how do we get that ego to adjust so that we can let in some more of that spirit?
You got to love it. You got to hug the cactus, man. You got to love that thing. You know what I mean? And what it needs is to be nurtured. It doesn't need to be ignored. It doesn't need to be fought. It doesn't need to be controlled. What it needs to be is nurtured and loved because it's a very viable part of you that does a really, really important job. It's just that we've given it jobs that it was never designed to handle. And so it doesn't do a very good job at
That
it,
is
you know?
so different from everything that I've heard with dealing with the ego, and it makes so much sense to nurture it, like your inner child. It's like working with your
Yeah,
inner child.
yeah. Hug
Yeah.
the kid, man. It's not the kid's fault. You know, you're the one that raised it. You know, I'm the one that spoiled my kid. That was me. That was who did that. And now I'm all bent out of shape because he's unreasonable. Well, of course he's unreasonable. I spoiled him for years, 30, 40 years. I spoiled that kid, you know? So yeah, he's unreasonable. I can't be mad at him for that. I got to love him enough so that he can become more reasonable.
I know that kid. I know
Yeah.
that kid. I have one of those. I've helped that same kid along. I love how you're talking about the what I refer to as the committee of me, right? There's parts of me that are kind of floating around in here, whether that's the ego and the inner child, the subconscious, which I can't trust with reality for anything. I don't know if the subconscious knows the difference between one or the other. But the ego really is there to keep us safe and do those things, and properly aligned can be incredibly motivating. I think that's
Yes.
one of the strongest motivating factors that we have with the ego. So help me understand, help us understand a little bit more of the nudge of not just, and I don't feel like we're talking about getting over the ego. I feel like we're kind of like classifying, letting it do the job it's supposed to. So once we've sort of pushed it into that, hey, this is your lane, right? What are you gonna tell your ego to keep motivated, to really start to unleash that part of it?
Well, that's the thing. It's not a one-time job, you know. I mean, you're a parent. You got a kid. So there's always something to be done. You know what I mean? The kid's always going to need a juice box. He's always going to freak out. He's always going to become unreasonable. He's always going to be demanding at different times. You know, when he gets a little hungry or angry or lonely or tired, he'll get kind of out of line, and you got to love him. You know, you got to give him what he needs. If he's hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, address those issues, you know.
Never leaving the house.
Huh?
He's never leaving the house, so
Yeah, right. You know, little guy, he's just out there trying to live his life, and he's been put in the position of being a adult, and he's not very good at it. You know, the spirit's really good at that. You know, the
Well,
spirit's really good at that.
to have them in the roles that make sense, right? And
Mm-hmm.
with the rememberers, that's remembering who we are in multiple levels. So the ego is part of this, but the body, right? And how we're managing that, the mind, or we want to connect those things, and then the spirit. Now you're really talking about a cohesive unit there, and not letting the ego get out of control. I
Right.
feel like, yeah, the message there is so strong.
And
You
and
dipped into,
you don't want to lean too far into the other two either, because you become ineffective that way too.
right. That's what I was thinking, is you kind of dipped into something earlier that I think explains that. You mentioned reality authoring.
Hmm. Now, reality authoring is a little bit more of an aggressive, or I'll say assertive approach to positive thinking. Where we come from in reality authoring is there were some studies done in UC Davis where they went they did brain studies on people, and they gave them an apple, they showed them a picture of an apple, and then they made them remember an apple. And the same exact thing happened in the brain every time. So the same electricity was happening. Everything was exactly the same, whether it was remembered, imagined, or looked at as a picture or held as an apple. So what that tells me is that if you put a picture in the front of your mind, in your conscious mind, your subconscious sees it and goes about the business of trying to draw the circumstances together to manifest whatever that is. Okay, that's what the subconscious does. Now, if we're dreading stuff, if we're sitting around dreading the things that we're afraid of, those pictures are in our mind. Our subconscious, you said earlier, doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. It doesn't. So if you're imagining the things you dread, it's going to try to manifest them for you, because its job is to manifest, not to judge, just to manifest. So what we've done is taken back control with reality authoring of what those vivid mental pictures are. What we've done is gone to the spirit and asked, hey, what are we supposed to be manifesting? And the spirit's like, Cheetos. And so you come back and you create a vivid mental image of Cheetos, the smell, the taste, the sound of the wrapper, the whole thing. And then the Cheetos come. I don't know. That's just how it works, because we've been reality authoring all along. This realm is based of chaos and intention. That's all that's here. It's just a big cloud of chaos that we focus our intention into, that responds to us. And so by dreading things, by being afraid of things, by having those things on our mind, we are actually creating them, because we're feeling those things whether it ever happens or not. We're experiencing those things with our bodies. We're experiencing those things with our minds. We're experiencing those things with our egos. We're creating belief systems based on the stuff we're making up. That's another thing. The belief system thing. It's a flawed process, man. Now, dig. You got a belief, okay? It's like a radio tower, you know? And it's supported by a big stone tower made up of evidence, because that's what we do. We have a belief, and then we collect all this evidence to prove that it's correct. So that radio tower sends out an automatic thought based on itself that triggers the hypothalamus, setting off neural peptides and giving us emotion, giving us a feeling. Okay. But then, because we have the feeling, we use that to back up the belief. The belief must be right because I got a feeling about it. Well, the belief created the feeling. It's a self-permeating loop. That's why we have to get the spirit involved, because that little loop right there of I have a belief that may or may not be bullshit is going to come up with stuff that's going to give me feelings that I think are real. And then I'm going to use it to back up the belief that in fact may be bullshit, you know? So I have to get out of that process, and I have to lean back into the spirit and listen to what I'm actually supposed to be manifesting, as opposed to sitting around feeling a bunch of weird stuff about things I'm making up.
How do you break the
Oh.
belief loop? How do you
You
stop that?
you lean back out into the spirit. You know what I mean? You start asking yourself those questions, you know, is it necessary? Is it truthful? Is it kind? You know, what is my motivation? Is it love, or is it fear? You know, am I trying to get a desired outcome, or am I being of service? You just start asking yourself some of those questions, and you can find out real quick if you're in the ego or not. You know, first,
That's really good, Bobby. That was a great list right there of ways that different ways that can happen. And basically, what you're saying is just asking the questions for ourselves, of ourselves, and being honest with the answers. And in a moment where things feel like, oh, this could be different. And I love what you're asking, Colleen. I think my question comes right before that. Is how if I don't know I'm caught in the loop, right? How do I know that I'm caught in a loop if I don't know I'm caught in the loop? Right? How do you become aware of that before you even get the chance to ask the question?
you have to become more uncomfortable than you are fearful.
Hmm.
You know, I have to become more uncomfortable emotionally in my circumstances, in my belief systems, in my actions. I have to become uncomfortable enough that it's bigger than how scared I am to change. You know,
Okay. Uncomfortability, if however you want to say that, being uncomfortable and the fear seem to, like, they would really go together. So having to learn how to separate those so that the fear's over here and you're like, yes, I'm uncomfortable, but I understand I'm safe, I guess, or I'm in the right direction. That's pretty big learning.
you got to rub the kid on the head, tell him it's going to be okay. Mommy's got this. You know what I mean? You don't have to be afraid. It's okay. This is going to be all right. You gotta take a minute to let the kid know that it's going to be okay. That it's just stuff that he don't understand or that she don't understand. You know, and that usually puts you back in a place of remembering that there is nothing to fear, because I'm not going to lose anything that's mine. I may lose some things I have that aren't mine, but I won't lose anything that's mine ever, because it's mine. I'm going to get the things I want because I have a manifestation monster in the back of my head that's trying to give me the things I want all the time. The difference is now that I'm showing it what I actually want. And what I actually want is to be of absolute service to the people around me and to the spirit that leads me. You know, I don't want a Cadillac anymore. I've had that. I don't want a big house. I've had that. I don't want fame. I've had that. I don't want fortune. I don't want those things. Although those things find me anyway. And it's okay. But what I do is I try to let the spirit flow through me and do whatever the hell it's supposed to do today. You know? And when I feel myself getting involved in the outcome, then I know that I'm starting to get in the ego and I'm starting to get in there and trying to help and muck about with things. And I know that I need to stop that. You know, I'll give you a good example. I was in Walmart the other day, and I'm standing in line, and I look over, and in the line that was close to me, there was a woman in that line. And angry white women scare me. They always have. And she seemed like a very angry white woman. And so I thought, wow, that's heavy. And then I looked away and I heard in my head, it's not her fault. Okay. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it's not her fault. You know, she probably had a rough go of it, whatever it was. I look over at her again, and I hear it's not her fault. I look away this way and I hear it's not her fault. So if I hear something like that, I know what my job is. My job is I got to go tell this lady it's not her fault. And I'm scared because she looks like somebody's going to blow my hair back the minute I walk up there. You know what I mean? And I walk up and I'm kind of chucking around and I said, hey, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but it's not your fault. And her face puckered up. She said, what? It scared me to death, man. And I said, look, I know this sounds crazy. You don't know me, but God told me to tell you it's not your fault. And she stuttered for a minute and then she started to cry. And then she hugged me and we hugged each other and we both cried and acted silly and eventually, after making a spectacle, we went back to our respective lines. And whatever that deal was, I don't know. I don't know what was in her fault, but whatever it was, my spirit that could hear her spirit, she couldn't hear her spirit. Her spirit's telling her it's not her fault. My spirit heard her spirit and told me to tell her. I told her, and it worked because I didn't question what to do, even though I was scared, because I was scared. I mean, I'm a big guy. I'm all tattooed. I look creepy as hell. You know, I'm the last person you want walking up to you saying, hey, this sounds weird, but I got a message for you. You know what I mean?
I love how you leaned in and said it. That was perfect. Well, I've experienced what you're talking about with you, Bobby. When we met at the show in Denver, excuse me, we kind of caught each other in the middle of one side of the show, and Bobby, you said you just weren't sure what you're supposed to be doing. Like, where am I supposed to be right now? I said, man, I'll tell you what I'm doing. And then when I told you that I was looking at the energy and the flow of that place, which we just talked about on our last episode with Desiree Pittman, actually too. You're the one who pointed out to me, hey, if there's an energy disruption, you're trying to do something with it, go in and just own it. And the place where I noticed it, you're the one who said there used to be gates there. So it would make sense that there was a blockage and that the flow of the event was going to stop at those thresholds. Right. And that was the inspired action that I took because you and I met in that place, right, in the middle of that room. And your direction is what sent me to go around and do what I did. So it really is just a product of following those things and actually, take the crazy action. Listen, I encourage people to do it. I'm not telling you to go streaking through traffic. Okay. Let's be realistic.
Go easy on that one.
Yeah. But there is definitely a reason to embrace those things and put them to work. A lot of times if I get a message, if it's for me or for somebody else, or especially if it's for both, man, if it's for both, that's got to get delivered. Somebody else needs it as much as I do. And that's the beauty of, to me, of following that inspired action. And that's what you're really doing with remembers.net. Is driving people back to remember those things and choose for themselves what they're going to create, their reality authoring. Right?
Absolutely.
Amazing.
And the groovy thing is when you lean into the spirit, everybody gets what they need. I hear stuff come out of my mouth sometimes and I'll think, wow, man, that was great. I don't know where that came from. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what I said, or I'll give a presentation and I don't remember 2/3 of what was said up there because it wasn't my ego. It wasn't my brain that was saying it. It was just a spirit flowing through and doing what it does and saying what it says. And people weirdly hear what they hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I get what I need out of it. They get what they need out of it. Everybody gets what they need, and we all go home happy. You know what I mean? And why wouldn't I want to do that more? The rest of the time, I'm just trying to manipulate my circumstances to get a desired outcome. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility too.
This place is like shoveling shit some days, and then other days it's literally dusting off diamonds all day long.
Yeah.
I just don't always know what I've come to understand for myself in remembering these things, and I love so many of the things that you've said about that, about remembering who we are, deciding for ourselves. One of the things that I really recognize is that if I stay in that inspired action and continue forward in that, doing the best that I can with that, just intention, right? For me, it's about integrity. That's my intention in it. If I don't know what else to do, that's what I look at. What's the integrity for me, and can I live with myself depending on how I proceed, and
Right.
being able to do that in such a focused way that gets rid of some of the misconceptions that we have about ourselves internally. And you're saying loving every part of our internal self kind of brings that balance in that space and lets us remember in a way that is fair, right? It levels the playing field internally, and it really gives us room to be who we are.
Well, the big problem that we face, especially in our social structure, first of all, our social narrative is you are not enough. That's our social narrative. You are not enough. Look outside yourself for something to make yourself enough. Produce, consume, do the thing. And from that comes three lies that are the most detrimental to the human psyche: that I am unlovable, I am unworthy, and that I'm powerless. And if I believe any of those or any variation of the three, I will be limited and I will not maximize any potential that I have. I won't even lean into the spirit at all, because I'll just be on that bummer of not getting what I want and losing what I got all the time. There's these world paradigms, man. Do we got a minute left or two?
Of course, do your
Okay.
thing.
There's these 5 world paradigms that I work with. One of them is the world is a battlefield. In that world, we have to fight for everything that we want. We have to fight to keep everything we have, because there's always someone trying to get it. I lived in that world for a long time. Then we've got the world as a classroom. It's less innocuous, but it's very similar to the battlefield, because what we're trying to do is learn lessons so that we can move on to greater arenas and rewards. You dig? Then you've got the world as a trap. That's always kind of tricky, because you want to ascend and pull yourself up out of the muck of the world. You dig? And that can be confused with walking a spiritual path. But in reality, walking a spiritual path is remaining here on the ground and helping others while you're doing it, as opposed to ascending above it and not having to deal with it anymore. Then you've got the world as a machine. That's always a tough one. That's corporate America. That's where you're just a cog amongst other cogs and doing your job. But the one that we try to lean toward with rememberers is the world as a lover, where the world approaches you and you approach the world as someone that you are passionate about and that you love. And would you want to help them manifest the things they want? Of course you would. And so the world approaches you that way. And then you realize, oh my gosh, this whole thing is just a big manifestation machine. And all along, I've been coming up with all kinds of bizarre stuff. One word about trauma. Trauma is the AP class of life. Okay.
Yep.
You can learn over a period of time a certain lesson, or you can take the trauma route, learn it quickly, and then move on into other lessons. I chose a lot of trauma in my early life because I wanted to learn stuff quickly when I was setting up this life of mine. I'm one of the people that believe that we come here with a plan, that we've mapped out a little scheme, and that we've got some of our soul tribe in on it, to give us a hand with some of it, and that is key in knowing that trauma. See, when I'm in my spirit, I don't have positionality based on what feels good and what doesn't, right? So when I plan these things, I plan some trauma because I know I can learn stuff quick, and then I put in a little bit of pleasure so that I don't get too bummed out, and then I put in a little bit more trauma, and I do these things so that I can learn these lessons. And then I got stuff that I'm learning over long periods of time and all these different ideas. So it's all part of it. The key is depth of experience. It doesn't matter whether it hurts, if it's a heartbreak, or if it feels great, if it's falling in love. What matters is that it is deep, that you experience it with depth and intention, because those are the things that we take with us when we go, is the depth and the intention. That's the stuff that uploads to the collective consciousness. That's the stuff that helps to shape our new, improved 2.0 soul for the next ride that we come through on, you know?
And
I don't know, man, I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
when you talk about choosing trauma, you don't mean consciously choosing trauma. You mean that was part of your spirit's plan.
That was part of my spirit's plan. You know, I talked my parents into being my parents, probably against their better judgment, because they had to come up with some pretty difficult roles to maintain. You know what I mean? To create the necessary circumstances for me to grow into who I am. But they showed up for it because they loved me, and they were willing to suffer alongside me, you know.
I drugged my mom through a couple of things. I'm right there with you, man. It feels like we're coming back to that same place when we're talking to the kid, or we're looking at our parents and going, everybody's doing the best they can with what's in front of them, right? And ultimately the universe is conspiring in your favor if you let it. that is really the truth. I love that phrase because it really puts it in a balanced place. You're going, wait, conspiring for me? Yeah, okay, I can dig that. I can work with it. You know, Bobby, I gotta say huge thank you for all of the wisdom you've been dropping. I love the extra pieces that you dropped in for us there at the end, and I really encourage everybody out there to take the time to go to rememberers.net and understand why we wanted to have Bobby on the show. Look and see what we're talking about. There are programs there, guys. It's not going to cost you anything to understand what these guys are talking about, and if any of this makes sense to you, if you have any kind of logic, and especially if you have none, you go and take a look at those videos, and I will tell you, I was learning things. I enjoyed every single one of them. I learned from each of them. It helped me understand some of the things that I was putting together in my brain were actually what I believed, because I could see it from a different perspective, you know, similar, but just different enough to make my own choice. So I really would sincerely tell folks to go out there and check out remembers.net. The videos are amazing, and all you got to do is sign up to get more of the same things there. And it doesn't come with a fee or any of those things, you guys. This is really about that.
All free.
Yeah, give it to the world. And Bobby, I know that that's what you're about, and what you represent in this space, because you really do care about what happens for people, because you've shown that to me in our friendship, and you clearly demonstrated what that means in your work and how you approach life today. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing your stories and you know, remembering who we are.
Yeah, for sure, man. I just want to tell everyone, go to the website, listen to the recordings, watch the videos. You don't have to do anything else. Just do that, and the change will take place. Do it for like 3 days. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, and I was about to ask you, what's the one takeaway you would give people? And that sounds like it.
Yeah. Give me 3 days. If I'm wrong, send me an email. Tell me my program's bupkis. Go ahead.
Oh, we want to say thank you to our cast, to our support staff, and Bobby, especially to you as our guest this evening for Two Scoops of Woo. Everybody heading out to remembers.net. I hope that everybody remembers who they are and comes back and tells us all about it. So, my man, much love for you for being here. Thank you to the Two Scoops cast. We're going to say goodbye for this episode, everybody, and we'll see you the next time around.
Goodbye.
Bye.